Hello, everybody. Does anybody else find it kind of weird that everybody who talks about this world being an illusion and we're all in a matrix and everything's deception and you gotta go down some rabbit holes and things like that? But no one wants to tell you the structure of this matrix or where the illusion stops and truth begins. And even if there is truth or is not truth, because we're creators, we can create truth. What's the basis? What is the reality where this facade of illusion hangs, right? There's got to be an answer, or we wouldn't even be looking for it. There would be no chance. Obviously, I feel that I can help in this way. Now, I'm not smarter than anybody else. I've just been looking long enough to find some interesting things that I'd like to share with you guys. But it is really crazy because it's not hard to believe these days because everything's kind of coming around to what it is. Quantum physics, things like that. Our education keeps us from truth in a certain sense, unless, especially if you're a Westerner. We know because our education is specifically made for us to be good citizens, and there's, on that premise, I guess that's not too bad. But what is the premise of this life? We can't say because we each have an individual process. But the structure, it does exist. And the structure exists and is no longer a secret. Now, for most people, that sounds kind of stupid because science and all these things and math, they all have truths, right? And we know that because we're figuring it out. But most Western religious, Christian, and monotheists anyway, know that there's a specific part in the Bible that says God told Moses he was going to take the knowledge away from his people. Okay? If you know, you know, you can find it. All this stuff, you can look up. There's nothing I'm going to tell you that's my knowledge. I wasn't touched by God. I wasn't, made aware suddenly. It was a long process. I would like you to be aware suddenly. You don't have to believe me. I don't want you to buy my coffee cups or join my cult. I just want somebody to know. Why would I do this? Not necessarily because I'm looking for attention, but because I would like someone to be just straight up honest with me about how this all works. And there's no reason not to be, right? As well as I feel the path that I've taken, we are at a momentous time in what we call evolution, okay? And in this evolution, we are getting a chance to take a big leap in our evolution. And we're going to be allowed, because we're going to allow ourselves to control this evolution. Okay? This is not political. This is not even religious, actually. It's just going to be what it is. Now, I'm not going to ask you to go down any rabbit holes, because really, from the perspective that I'm going to come from, that I'm going to, speak from, is we're already at the bottom of the rabbit hole. We're at the bottom of everything. We're the lowest and most distant we could possibly be. Remember I said that because that's going to be important later. But how do we go through this process? How come nobody tells you what the matrix is? Well, because there are so many. Because man is a creator and man can create matrices. Okay? And we have been doing this for a long time. Some of it within the reality that we live in, and some of it to hide that reality. Okay? So I'm going to go over now. It's a little story about myself and a gauge, sort of. A gauge in how much do you really want this matrix to be real or unreal, and how do you want to use it to evolve yourself and to help in the evolution, the conscious evolution of mankind. Okay? In the movie The Matrix, in my opinion, the most important person is Cypher. You can figure that out later. And this is going to help you understand what I mean by this is going to be a gauge for you to understand, because it's pretty whacked out. Okay, you got to go insane, right? So I had the GI Bill. I had to sign out back in when I went in. And you lose it within 10 years. So after about 5 years, I went back to college. I went to college, and I learned in the military, just repeat what everybody says and kiss ass, and you get straight A's. So I was knocking it out, right? But I had to take math over. So I was doing math, ace in every class, and then I got to algebra. Now, I understand formulas. I understand algebra. I can do trig. I can do calc. It's so amazing to me. But this led me on my path to certain knowledge. And knowing, and not exactly being an overachiever, but knowing that when a problem persists, that you can take care of it. And being kind of a book nerd, when I had problems with algebra, I decided to go to the library and pick up a book about math. And it was kind of a book about history of math. And it started really obscure, like looking at two mirrors facing each other. And it's an infinite image, but you have a limitation of how much you can see. And even though you know that the image may go on forever, it doesn't even matter. So it was a really obscure, interesting book. And then it started going into Egyptian math. Now, these aren't my words. These are just observations that I'm making, but the engineers of today and the mathematicians of today, which I am neither, tell us that the pyramids in Egypt and even in Central America, their math is so perfect, their construction is so precise that we can't even do that today. That's crazy, right? So these aren't my words. I'm just that's a footnote for you. So I'm learning about Egyptian math, and then it goes into some Mayan math. Well, there's two things about both mathematical forms that really caught my eye. One was neither of them had a value 0. There was no 0 value. Everything started at 1, or a fraction. Okay, there was no 0. They did use pi and phi. Okay, I don't even think they used pi, actually. I think they used phi. But the thing that caught my attention the most was that neither had any value for subtraction. Neither system used subtraction whatsoever. So it's interesting that we're going to start, when I said we're not going to go down a rabbit hole, and I would like to tell you how the structure exists and how we function in it and how it functions us. And then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to let you know that I've learned through my own searching, kind of accidentally, that I did realize that subtraction actually doesn't exist. Now, why is this a gauge? Now, because how stupid does that sound? If it sounds really dumb to you, then you're probably not going to want to go too far. It's okay. Reality, what we call reality, or what we share, this illusion that we share that we call reality, is fine. We have to live in it. It's great. You can find joy here. That's probably much the blanket purpose of life itself, is to find joy and to live joy. One of the most interesting transcendental movies that I'm going to bookmark right now is Free Guy, because at the end of that movie, he says one of the greatest quotes probably ever, about how the creator wanted to reflect something so beautiful that he made his character or some shit. I can't remember. Jesus, that was bad. Anyway, Check it out. It's kind of cool. So if you can't decide, or you don't want to, or maybe you need to look it up because it's really hard to find on the internet, because I've looked it up so I could help you a little bit more, help others if I say this stuff, because I've talked to mathematicians and I'm a real asshole, apparently. But one very strong point that eventually will have to be true is that there's no such thing as subtraction. And we also know in the laws of thermodynamics that nothing can be created or destroyed, okay? And that is really important because it means everything has a form, everything has a wave, everything has a place where it is in a mean, where it's balanced. And if it is out of that balance, then it is no longer what it is, but it is something else, okay? It's not gone. And to think about that, how does subtraction not exist? How is that even practical? That doesn't even make sense. Well, we see it a lot. If you've ever made soup and put too much salt in the soup, you can't take the salt out of the soup. You got to put more water in, or more of whatever the soup is made out of in the soup to balance it, right? So that's just, an idea of what exactly it would look like. Or for a practical use, okay? If subtraction actually existed, if subtraction literally existed, like we could use it besides in idealistic mathematics on a piece of paper. If we could use subtraction, then why would we pile up so much garbage? Why would we make so many dangerous chemicals through manufacturing and mining and things like that? Why wouldn't we just subtract them so they're no longer dangerous? Why wouldn't we be able to subtract them safely? Why wouldn't they just no longer exist because we decided we'd subtract them? Okay, that was a little deeper, but it's all going to be understanding about how you want to think, because everybody wants to think for everybody else these days, and I'm just not buying it. I never did. I was lucky. I grew up with a strong family, and I was able to be, an individual within that family, which was great, because I see a lot of social pressures, and I never had to succumb to them because I had family to fall back on. I know that everybody doesn't have that, and everybody's not that fortunate. And I'm sorry, but we're all one family, okay? There's some other things that a lot of us miss because we don't really look it up, and we're busy with our day, and you don't need to, right? But if you can look it up on your phone right now, there's things that prove things that I might go over that are a little far-fetched, like the 100th monkey experiment. So the 100th monkey experiment, if you look it up, has to do with eventually, when you get to the end, it has to do with the collective conscious. I'm going to talk about collective conscious, not only a collective conscious of humanity or mammals or the earth or the universe. Yeah, it gets crazy. Collective conscious in and of itself. Other things like the double slit experiment. It's very important because what it shows is observation is the key to our existence. How we observe, what we observe, and why we observe it. You might not get all that out of that, but it's peer-reviewed science, and it works. But you gotta find it, because no one's telling you to go look it up. I mean, you can look it up right now on your other phone, like I said. And then there's other people who are talking about this stuff, like Greg Braden. He's really about talking about stuff. I'm promoting him. He has nothing to do with me. I'm promoting him because he worked for the Fortune 500. He's got a lot of really good stuff. Some of it's really far out, so don't get too far out, but he allows you to decide for yourself. There's something in the medical world now called epigenetics. Epigenetics means above genetics, and they're finding out that cells are absolutely fantastic, and they're doing a lot of work with them now. Something you may have seen, which is a little maybe on the darker side from my perspective, but cool all the same, is they're putting chicken cells in those little pens that you put in your printers, and they're printing off chicken nuggets. Isn't that crazy? We can do way cooler things with cells, even to the point of building people's organs, right? You gotta check it out. Look it up. You gotta find it. You gotta do some searching. You gotta dig, because your AI search engine doesn't know what you're looking for. So you gotta keep looking and keep looking and keep looking until you hit something that's really cool and really positive, because that's what we want, right? At least in some sense. I'm with you. If you stick with this program, I'm going to go from the top down. So I'm not going to, there's no religion. There's science, but you can find it now. It was hard to find before. Even though it existed, there's stuff written in the 1800s that is so on point that we don't hear about, and that's not part of our education. And there's obviously reasons for that. I don't know. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to know that that certain things are not quite right with certain ways that the people who own you treat the collective, okay, especially in the Western world. So basically what I'm saying is, this is an introduction to, basically it's science, and we can go with that, to what our body is and how it works in this environment and the environment around us, and how it all coexists in the right way, in a positive way, and because that's what we need, more positivity. And although it's a lot technical, and although a lot of the things that I'm going to say are kind of depressing, because we look at things the way we've been told to look at them, instead of looking at ourselves as a soul who's having an experience on a playing field, or if that's too hard for you, a soul, a conscious who is navigating an area, we can take the darkness out of it. But either way, it's just how things are. And yes, it's known. You usually have to join something or figure something out, and then they take you through some shapes and they take you through all kinds of stuff. I'm not going to do that, because as a worker bee, as a person who appreciates being a creator in a lot of ways, who knows how to read a blueprint, just tell us. I'm just going to tell you how it is and how it works from my perspective, from what I've learned. Is it the end all? In a way, but it's definitely more of a beginning. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you find positive things throughout your day, and be positive to others, because everybody's having a hard time right now, because a lot of things are changing. A lot of energy is coming to the earth. There's a lot of solar flares. If you don't know, the center of the earth has stopped spinning. You can look that up. Things like that, which you're not getting in the mainstream media. We're just being bombarded with genocide and sickness and all these weird commercials about how everybody's happy doing pharmaceutical drugs and stuff. And get out of that stuff. This is where I'm at. I'm in nature. I love it. I love it so much. I do it a lot, because this makes me feel good to be a part of the life that's here, to be a part of the trees that support me by breathing my carbon so I can breathe their oxygen. Stuff like that. See you soon.